This is basic testing in Foundry. Take a look at the smart contract, which we'll be testing today. It's rather simple and has few important functions. The first function is add, very simple, it just adds two numbers. But what it also does, it also makes a call to another smart contract, which we import here. And the only job of this other smart contract is updating the index. So adding +1 every time we add some numbers. That's why we call it indexer. The next thing it does, it emits an event. The event is rather simple too. It just emits the result number, and then it also returns the result normally. Then we have our owner related stuff. As you can see, we have a storage field here, owner, and also our setters and getters for changing owner and getting owner. And we'll use this for testing whether somebody is authorized to make a call or not. So let's go to the test file in the test directory. It has the same name but with .t so that we can differentiate between those two. It imports the Forge standard test library and also our smart contract. The test itself is also a smart contract which inherits from the test file imported here. If you are curious, you can open the test file and see what happens here and all of the functions you can use. The first thing we need to do here is we need to declare and create our contracts. So we start with declaring contract and indexer. And then we set this up. So we have the setup function, which is called automatically at the start of the tests, which creates the contracts. Then you have two basic functions created by default when setting up the Foundry template repository, and then our first function, which is test calculating. It's a very simple test, which is always public. And the tests need to be either public or external, so we go with public. And you can see that we use the first assert equal function, which takes the calculator contract and calls the add function. So we add 2 + 3, and then here we paste the expected result. This assert equal functions and all of the similar functions with different parameters is very useful, very simple, and can be used for strings, booleans, ints, uints, and whatever else. So it will probably be your most used function. Now we have our test indexer function, because maybe you remember that our contract also called the indexer update index value. So while testing the add function, I'd like to know whether the indexer was called and whether the update index value function was triggered. And to test this, we used VM expect call. VM isn't something you have to initialize, it's initialized by default. So we can always type VM dot and a function name here. You can see that it takes two parameters. First, the address, so the thing we want to be invoked, and then bytes call data. So bytes call data, we use ABI encode call to pass the function we expect to call with the arguments. Indexer update index value takes no parameters, so we pass empty parentheses. But if it took two arguments, like in add example, you will just pass 2 and 3. Then we trigger the add function, and that's it. We trigger the add function and expect the indexer to be called. Next test, which is testing emits. As you can see right here, we created an event calculate result, and it's the same event just like in this contract. We did it only so that we can create the same event here. As you can see, we need to emit the event, the same one we expect to be emitted in the function we test. So what we test here is the calculator add function, which emits the same event. And also before doing all this, we need to use the expect emit function, with all of those strange booleans. And to see what it's all about, just Ctrl and left click, and you can see that it mentions all of those topics. Topics 1, 2, and 3 are all about index parameters in events. Our parameters are not indexed, as you can see here, and we don't really care about that. And I don't think that it's very important for basic testing either. So let's just disable checking for index parameters and move on. The next couple of very useful tests is testing whether you're authorized or not to do something. And for this, we have the change owner and get owner functions. First, we say that we expect that in this test, we will be reverted with the you are not the owner error message. And as you can see in our contract, is the same exact message we throw here. it has to be the same, otherwise the test will fail. And that's very useful in case you have some errors in logic and the test is reverted, but by some different require with a different message. Now we know what to expect, but we are actually authorized to change the owner because we are the owners of the smart contract. We are the same message sender who created the smart contract. So we want to change our address for a second, only for this test. And for this, we use VM prank. And here in the argument, we pass the address we want to switch to. And if you go to the documentation, you can see that the next call, we have the message sender of the input address. So in the next call, only in this test, we'll use the address 0 as our message sender. So we shouldn't be authorized to change the owner. With all this setup, now we can call the change owner and try to change the address to whatever, in this case even address 0. And the change owner function will revert the transaction, but we are ready for it because of the expect revert. So the function, the test will pass. Now let's see what happens when we are authorized. So let's say we change the owner, but without changing our address to address of 0. This makes us authorized, so we can check whether the address was changed to the address of 0, just like we instructed the smart contract to. So that's it, very simple but very useful examples for basic testing. So now let's run the tests, and for this I'll use forge test. And as you can see, everything passes. But what about testing more advanced cases, or even cases like checking whether the money was sent correctly, for example by checking message values? Well, if you want a new video with more advanced testing in Foundry, let us know in the comments. If you like our content, make sure to like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. Thanks and see you next time.